Right.
All right, welcome everyone. We are very happy to be here with you all this afternoon. My name is Rosie McCool with the Chief Probation Officers of California, and this is our informational workshop with one of our probation partners, which we are very excited to have with us today, DLR. Before we get started, I will go through a few different housekeeping items. Do want to make sure everyone saw the notice that this workshop is being recorded. We post all of these online so that if you want to go back and view at a later date or send to a colleague, you will be able to access the presentation at a later date. We will be taking questions, and there's two different ways to ask questions during the informational workshop. You can utilize the chat feature and type your questions in there. As well, you can use the raise your hand feature, and when we get to the conclusion of the presentation, we can take questions using that function too, and you can unmute yourselves and ask your questions to our speakers directly. As always is requested, the copies of the PowerPoint that will be sent out later next week. We are just doing some final approvals before sending out, so you can expect to receive a copy of the PowerPoint sometime next week. And so we'll be happy to share that once it is ready. So with that, I am going to introduce our speakers. As I mentioned, DLR, they are a probation partner, which we are very appreciative of. They are an architectural engineering design firm, and one of the areas that they specialize in is juvenile justice facility design, which they'll be speaking with us today about. So very excited to have both Daryl Stelling, who is a senior principal with DLR, and Marika Lopez, who is a senior associate with DLR. And so very happy to have them with us this afternoon, and look forward to a lot of the great information that they are going to be sharing about just the new innovative designs with juvenile justice facilities and some of the work that they're doing here in California and have done elsewhere. And so I'm very happy to have them here today. And with that, I believe, Marika, you're going to kick it off, so I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Rosie. So thank you very much for having us and for giving us the opportunity to present to you today. I would like to start this presentation by saying that the best way to discuss contemporary best practices is by revisiting the past, because it is only that looking at the past practices and trends that we are collectively very suited to understand where we are today. So accordingly, we have organized our presentation in the sense that I will first discuss past practices, and then we will move to have a look at where we are now, and finally we'll look at what is the way forward in the design of facilities for justice-involved youth. So what have we done in the past? Let me see if I can advance the presentation. So what have we done in the past? So there was a time in the 80s that because of cutbacks there were like financial issues and cutbacks that resulted also in cutting treatment and educational programs for justice-involved youth. All of these resulted in a reported wave of crime committed by youth, in an increase in arrests for murder, violence, and gang activity. As a result of this, in the 90s, the term juvenile super predator was born from the avalanche of, I will say what it was, like biased media coverage. And then we saw like a wave of tough on crime philosophy, which play a key and game-changing role in how to respond to the problem of juvenile crime. So this all resulted in an increased demand for secure bed space capacity, and for jurisdictions that could not afford building new facilities, overcrowding soon became a problem. On the other hand, for those jurisdictions that could build new facilities, the philosophy of punishment changed significantly the structure, the security, and the programming of these facilities. So what we saw is that we start building large juvenile facilities that were incarcerating hundreds of kids. Those facilities were located far from where those kids were coming from, so away from the communities, away from the families, and basically the philosophy was out of sight, out of mind. So in these facilities, the youth were treated like inmates, and therefore the structures designed to hold and to house these juveniles pretty much resemble like adult facilities, the facilities that we were designing for adults. So they resemble like mini jails, and architectonically in their appearance and their feel, they were very dull, they were very harsh, they were highly institutional, and they were very gray and dark. So mainstream youth in those facilities were packed, and they were warehoused in large barrack-style dormitories, as you can see in here, with zero privacy. And in those facilities, they were subjected to military-style regimes. And for those that were considered like more high risk and high need, they were housed in restrictive housing or in isolation. So as you can guess, like housing youth in these facilities for retribution and operated with punitive and control attitudes in these facilities, there were many histories of abuse and neglect. And as one of these quotes points out, in facilities that look and feel like prison, where people are treated like animals, kids are going to act like and feel like criminals, and they're gonna act like animals. So nothing but harm was coming out from these very harsh environments and poor conditions. And the result is that many of the youth were graduating from the juvenile into the adult system. So the many negative and collateral consequences made some leaders realize that something needed to change. And we also realized that all this time we had been asking the youth the wrong question, and that rather than asking youth what is wrong with you, the right thing to do was to ask them what has happened to you. So accordingly, the focus shifted to trying to understand the histories and the backgrounds of the youth population. So in doing so, what we found out is that most of the youth that come into contact with the criminal justice system, they have suffered many adverse childhood experiences. So they come from very abusive backgrounds. At the time of their arrest, most of them either were homeless or they were not living with any parent. And also they come to the system with very long and complex histories of trauma, abuse, and co-occurring disorders. So with this better understanding of who these youth are, about 35 years ago, via the state of Missouri, we witnessed a new approach to dealing with young offenders. So under the leadership of Mark Stewart, which was the visionary former director of the Missouri Division of Youth Services, came a new paradigm in the custody and care of incarcerated youth. So what happened back 30 years ago is that Missouri abandoned all their large training schools for boys and girls in favor of small-scale facilities that are located close to where the kids come from and that provide a normalized and a home-like environment. So in Missouri, the average facility is about 32 beds, and there is no facility that is larger than 90 beds. Under this new paradigm, properly assessed and classified youth are treated in small groups of between 8 and 12 residents, and they all house in residence-like units. So when the Missouri model first started, what happened is that Missouri took over existing facilities, and most of the facilities that they reused were former boarding schools or school buildings. this is the reason why at the beginning, in Missouri, most of the youth were housed initially in dormitories. However, since then, we have learned about the importance of personal space, and that in order to maximize privacy, but also safety, every youth should be afforded their own bedroom. And that to give youth a sense of self-worth and control over their personal space, we also learned that we have to allow youth to personalize their own space. So a new component, a new key component of the new operational model is to manage youth under what it's known as dynamic supervision. So this approach, which calls is for the direct interaction between youth, workers, and residents that is free of physical barriers. And in this new model, each interaction is seen as an opportunity to mentor and to role model pro-social and healthy behaviors. We also learn that to keep youth engaged and motivated, they need to have access to an extensive program of activities and meaningful treatment and sessions. But while it is important that kids participate in structured counseling and treatment, we also have learned about the value of creating spaces within the facility where kids can be kids. They can have some fun and practice their favorite hobbies, like as I'm showing here some of the pictures, like recording music, getting their hands dirty while gardening, or while repairing a bicycle, or maybe petting a dog. And we also learn about the importance of involving families as part of the recovery, and also as part of the treatment and the discharge plans. So all of these what necessitates is of friendly, culturally sensitive, and all-inclusive spaces within the facilities. So next, what I want to do is to present a case study from the District of Columbia under the leadership of Vince Giraldi. About 20 years ago, the District of Columbia adopted the Missouri model. However, before they could secure money to build a new facility, they had to work with what they had. And what they did was to repurpose and upgrade their existing youth facility to create the type of normative and nurturing and home-like environment that was needed according to the Missouri model. So I believe that if I click, you can see this is an existing facility, but how the space was upgraded, the made-up of the facility for it to be more normative and home-like and more resembling of life in the community. But then finally, they were lucky that in 2014, they could open what it's called today as the New Beginnings Youth Development Center. So this facility is a 60-bed male residential facility for adjudicated youth. And this is the first facility in the nation ever designed under the tenets of the Missouri model. So as you can see, this facility is organized as a campus, and it has like 3 standalone residences. It has like a school building, and then it has a recreational building, and finally an administrative building of interconnected core services. So the feel of the openness throughout the campus, what conveys is like a movement throughout the facility, and also allows kids like in and out on a daily basis. So nowadays, what we know is like life in the inside of this facility should resemble as more as possible as life in the outside. And that's why we need to allow kids to experience like the change of seasons, like they will experience if they were in the community, and very important, like having them access also to fresh air. So as you can see, like there is, well, I'm showing one of the cottages, is what the cottage, one of the residences. But what I'm gonna show next is like that's the feeling of the open campus. And you know, for some some level kids, the movement throughout the campus is like free. For others, is escorted, but in any case, it emulates like how their daily life will be in the community. Like in the morning, they will leave their houses and they will go to the school building, either like to assist to a class or maybe to receive some kind of vocational training and living skills. So I'm showing very quickly other aspects of the facility. So this is the inside of one of the residences. So each of these residences houses like 10 youth. And in addition to their own individual bedrooms, there are a lot of spaces for the kids for the socialization and also spaces for them to congregate. And on the right, what I'm showing is one of the current bedrooms, like individual bedrooms. And I cannot but help myself always to stress the importance of the chartboards, because the boards allows the kids not just to express themselves, but from a management perspective, we also discovered that from the perspective of the staff, this has become like an intelligence tool, because there is a lot that you can learn from what the kids display in those chartboards. So finally, finally, I want to show also other pictures of this facility that are illustrating some of those places for socialization and for congregation. As you can see, in the past, all the lines, we were just building boxes, like there was no like visual variety. So nowadays we are working like with facilities that have curves. It also helps with having like good views. And as you can see, like there are spaces that double sometimes as there are multi-purpose spaces that double for group sessions, but sometimes are also using for visiting purposes. There is a variety of options when it comes to visits. And I will say that that what we find out a lot from parents is that for the parents, the one of the greatest fear is like not to know in the conditions that their kids live. So what we're doing nowadays is that we provide a lot of class so that from the visitation areas, the families themselves, they can have views to the campus, so they can have a feel for where their kids live and where the kids return once they leave the visitation areas. So I'm just showing some more pictures of this facility. So it has a full gym, it has an auditorium. This auditorium is not just for the residents that live inside the facility. This auditorium is also like open to the community, and there are a lot of activities that the community members perform in these spaces. So nowadays we are creating facilities that are not just a resource for the justice system, juvenile justice system, but they become a resource for the community. So I will say that since this facility first opened, it has and continues to represent a national model in the treatment of youth and in the design of contemporary youth facilities. So this is one of the facilities in the United States that has been most toured by international visitors. And Andy Couples, who was supposed to be presenting to you today, was key in bringing this model to fruition. So the last thing that I'm going to say before I turn it into Daryl is that since Andy Couples joined DLR, we have continued to use the tenets of the Missouri model as the guiding principles during the planning and the design process of new facilities. And we have been adapted some of the original concepts based on the lessons that we learn and the new shifts and trends that have occurred since then in the profile and characteristics of the young population. So with that, I will turn it to Darrell and I will let them talk about what we're doing today.
All right, thanks, Marika. You want to go ahead and continue to
Yes.
flip through the pages? Says what are we doing now, but a few of these are still past projects that we've done. As Marika said, it's really a progression of the Missouri model. So we're with every facility that we do, we're creating a new model for that specific jurisdiction based on the kids that they have and the specific issues that they have. But they're all built on that premise that goes all the way back to the Missouri model. But we're developing newer and newer best practices as we move forward and design these new facilities and learn from each one of them. But you see a lot of similarities, but you'll also see a number of different nuances as well. So we start off with Campus Kilpatrick, which is the first model that we did in California to develop a new model for LA County. This project is a very remote Malibu Hills facility. So just with that, it presented some challenges for them, but it is very much a camp, as you saw with the other facilities that Marika showed. But it's really a creating a normalized environment, creating a campus, creating normal attitudes for the youth that are incarcerated in the facility to have a normal daily function. They are in their housing units at night. During the day, they're walking out to recreation. They're walking to their classes for school. They're walking to recreation, to gymnasium. They're dining in a dining hall just like they would do in a high school setting. The security measures are very passive in these facilities in that they're still hardened in some locations, allow for safety, but the passiveness is that you don't recognize it as something that's secure like you would in the old style facilities or adult detention, which everything kind of stemmed out of. So some of the images on the screen you see here, the one on the right that's the public entrance to the facility. Right down to how you interact with the public coming in, it's a normal experience for them. There's no longer you go talk through a port where somebody can very uneasily hear you. There's a window that opens up and you talk face to face with the person that's coming in, and it's very personalized. The control room is in the bottom center. It does not look like a control room in this facility. It looks more like just a normal office space. As soon as you approach the entries into the facility, again, very normalized campus-like environment, like you're walking into a high school atmosphere or even a junior college type atmosphere. Go ahead and go to the next slide. The image on the screen here is the first portion where you actually enter into the building. This is, believe it or not, is the sally port into the facility. So you're going through a secure space here. To this date, I've still never seen a sally port like this, with all the greenery in it, wood roofs, that type of thing. It's still a secure space, but looks very different from the old style facilities. Gives everybody a calming perception as they walk into this facility. This is an overview of the campus. You see housing in the modules on the left, and then the right is all the support services. So a very open campus where kids can go walk across the campus to whatever function they're going to be doing throughout the day. Go to the next one. And then these are the housing cottages. So again, really trying to make these look more residential and feeling in nature for this facility. I think you go to the next slide, Marika, it shows the interior of it. These facilities are based on 12 bed units, and they're actually based on dormitory style living. This is one of the places where we learned a lesson with this, that we are not recommending dormitory style living for the youth. Each of them come with some form of trauma, and you put them into a group setting like that, and trauma can continue. So when they need to release it in the evenings and go back to their own space, we recommend that we do it in a more normal bedroom type atmosphere where they're retreating to their own room, so they can feel safe at night and not have those stressors throughout the night as well. Go ahead and go to the next. So this is the main bar of all of the support services. The pink is the school. So you see we typically organize that around a quad. All of the school functions can be seen in a passive manner by staff. On the end, where the number 14 is, we have CTE type functions. We have general classrooms across the top and across the bottom. Then when you get to the middle, we have the gymnasium, but the item number 10 really makes that unique in that it's got a stage system in it so that you can have events, you can have graduations, you can have performances, those type of things. And it can be used in the outdoor venue, and it can also be used by the indoor venue at the gymnasium. And then as you move down the bar, the wave on the right where it says Student Commons, that is really a universal space and is attached to the gymnasium. So visitors that come to the facility can go back and forth between all these. It's used as the dining hall throughout the day with the kitchen and food services in the blue in the middle. But you really used as a universal space for people coming and going into the facility. And then when you get to the right, the little L-shaped piece, that's most of the staff type spaces and control right there at the main junction where the public comes into the entry. We can go to the next. So here's some interior images. This is the common space of the dining hall. So again, it's a very inviting space. So they do their visitation here, they do their dining here, they have classes here, they have special events here. So very inviting space. You would not think that this is a juvenile juvenile detention space at all. So really a normalized environment is what we're after with these spaces. Go ahead and go to the next. The food service is also normalized. There's no longer blind feed lines and those type of things like you see more in detention type facilities. They're open. It's more like a high school cafeteria line where you go through the line, pick out what you want to eat, and then go back out into the common space. And then we also are mixing in programs with this. So this is a culinary arts program for the kids so they can learn how to cook meals. Some of them are very basic, learning how to cook for themselves to make a meal. They've never been taught this type of thing. Some of them we actually get into full culinary classes, and they'll have visitors come in, and they will actually cook meals for the visitors when they come in, cook meals for their parents, whoever it might be. They do that in the same space as well. And go to the next. And here's a view of that gym. So you can see that the stage in the lower right, it has access to the outside. There's a roll-up door there, so you can open up. So you can have a stage for the exterior, you can have a stage for the interior. Use this for a multitude of functions. There can be performances here. You can have your athletics here. You can do graduations, pretty much any one of those type of functions. But again, it's very normal. This looks more like a high school or a middle school gymnasium than anything that you would ever see in a juvenile facility of 10 to 20 years ago. But as far as the classrooms go, again, normalizing it to make it look and feel just like a normal classroom. But you also have to have security measures in all these spaces, and we understand that. A couple of things to point out in here is the raised ceilings in these spaces. We keep those at least at 10 feet to keep them out of reach. And then all of the light fixtures and those type of things are vandal resistant. But again, they still look like normal classroom type fixtures that you would use in those facilities. The glazing on the exterior walls is another thing. The height of where the glazing is set so that when the kids are sitting in their seats, they can't see out the window out to the common space. So anybody out in the common space or across to the other classrooms on the other side, they can't see it. But any custody staff that needs to be doing rounds to make sure that nothing's going on, they can actually walk by and they can see into the classrooms easily. Go ahead and go to the next, Marika. Then this is a look at some of the CTE programs. So very specialized things. You see the TVs on the wall. Each one of those is a different space where they're learning a different type of trade. They could be learning how to plumb a wall one day, or they could be learning how to do some electrical wiring, a multitude of different things that can be done in these spaces, and they're all set to be universal, so you can swap them out in whatever type of education things that you're teaching the kids. Go ahead, Marika. So here's another look at the campus from the top end of it, with all the outdoor recreation. One of the things we've learned is kids don't like to play volleyball. So we are putting in more basketball and more handball type courts as well. Okay, go ahead and go to the next. This is just a nice shot of the outside. So the building on the right that's the commons space. So very nice looking building, but they're also durable and withstand the test of time for the type of facility they are. And then this is an article that came out that it cost more than what they thought at the beginning of it, but in the end was well worth what they got out of it. And I think a jewel for LA County's youth system. Okay, go ahead. So before I turn this over to you, Marika, I'm gonna let everybody know that if you do want to ask questions, please ask questions on the way through this. If you want to throw them into the chat, we're watching the chat. So if anybody has any questions, we can try to answer them as we move through this, so we don't have to wait all the way till the end to answer questions. Go ahead, Marika.
Oh, I thought you were doing that, but I can take over if you want.
Oh no, there's no questions in the chat. I wanted to remind everybody that they can put them in the chat, and we're watching. So
Okay,
go ahead if you want to cover this one.
I'll cover this one. So this was an existing facility, and this project were involved for DLR was an expansion of the housing. So the existing housing was mostly dormitory. And when I toured the facility and I had the opportunity to talk to residents and asking them, like, compared to where you were before, what do you prefer? And unanimously, they said that they will never want to go back to the dormitory style, and that they really so appreciated the fact that each one at the end of the day, they could go to their own rooms and have their own personal space. So as you can see, when we think now about like residences, we are bringing into these concepts anything that exists out there, like contemporary styles of living. So again, it's very important that life in the inside, it's as close as possible to life in the outside. Sometimes we are told, yeah, but when they go back to their communities, those kids, they don't live in places like this. But you know, even exposing them to facilities like this, for them, we learn that it's aspirational for now, for them. It's like for some of those kids, it's like, I could aspire to live in a place like this, because yes, unfortunately, most of them have a life of survivals, and they have never even had their own space. So everything that we bring to the design, there is a lot of biophilia, and there is a lot of literature on the effects of natural light, the effects of having soothing colors, of being very mindful of acoustics. So we know that there are a lot of research in other fields, similar type of institutions, like hospital recovery, sheltering centers, where there is a lot of research that shows the value of some of these features, even the value of being connected to nature. So in California, you all are lucky, for those that are in California, that you have a good weather and you can have this connectedness to nature. You can have open spaces, but I live and work mostly in the East Coast, so our weather is not always as amenable to have this type of open campuses. But what we have even discovered is that when we cannot provide this direct contact of views to the nature, incorporating murals into the facility, providing these large visuals of nature, has the same impact that you will have if you were directly exposed to nature. And we know that this exposure within seconds reduces like stress and reduces the levels of anxiety. The same with the panels. Now we often use those acoustic panels that are not just ugly panels. Now there is, like in the industry, the possibility to also use these panels to create those murals. So you're almost almost like killing two birds with a stone. And we know how important acoustics are in facilities, not just for residents, but also for staff that have to live in those facilities for more years than the residents. We know that bad acoustics cause a lot of anxiety. So Darrell, again, back to you.
Yep. So now we're going to bring it back to California again.
Rosie, oh, hold on a second. I'll see Rosie.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna add on to that, Marika, what you were saying. Many probation departments in California, what they've also been doing is partnering with local artists and putting murals in facilities and also engaging the youth in that process too. So there's, as we've been looking at and touring facilities, we've been seeing some great artwork in facilities across the state.
Nice.
Right. Okay, so we're coming back from Oregon now. We're going back to California. So what you see on the screen is the San Diego Youth Transition Campus. So a very new model for them. Construction on phase 2 is almost complete in the next couple of months. The phase 1 of their campus is complete and has been open for about a year now. In succession with other facilities, there was one others between this. Monterey County did a new facility there where a number of these type of things were actually implemented as well. But in the interest of time, we cut that one out to hit some of these that had multi-phases and those kind of things. So you can see the images on the screen here of the old style, the linear and pin bar type facility really set up more as a detention facility based on adults rather than youth and what the youth actually needed. So the image in the upper left, the yellow area, that's the portion for the new camp for committed youth. Temporarily, we moved those kids over to the detention portion, which wasn't much different from the camp that they were in, because the population was down enough that we were able to temporarily house there while the new camp was being built in phase 1. And then we were able to move kids over to the other side after phase 1 was complete, so that we could knock down and build phase 2. So what you see on the screen on the right are all the new buildings. So the circle with the 4 buildings, those are housing. The bottom portion where it says new campus, that is all the support functions where you have dining hall, visitation, you have all of your staff spaces, you have medical intake, release, those type of things. And then the 4 buildings in the middle that create the kind of that center quad, that's the school functions, where you have 3 classroom buildings, you have the administration, and then the building on the right is the gymnasium, which also functions as has a couple of classroom spaces in it as well. The bigger thing with that, if you want to go back on that one, I think it's easier on this one, where it says new campus right above the new, that is the medical portion of the facility, and then the school, the gymnasium, and on the right, those functions have to be used for both for the camp and for the detention side that's in phase 2. So there had to be a way to take everything that's going to be on the left in the future and have them come over to those spaces, but still keep the 2 populations separate. So really, we created an outdoor sally port in between all of those buildings, using the buildings for security, and then simple fencing between those so that we can shut down the 2 sides, have kids move to where they need to go, to medical or to the gymnasium, by opening up the left side for the detention in certain points of the day, or shutting that down and opening up the right side for the campus portion. So it's things like that we can do to be able to run multiple population types within the same facility. Go ahead and then switch. So this is the image on the left is construction is complete and construction is started for the complete for the campus portion, and you're about midpoint construction for the detention portion on the top side. And on the right's a rendering image of the entire campus once it's complete. Go ahead and switch. So here again, you can see the 4 buildings on the circle, heavily landscaped campus in the middle. But again, choosing your plantings wisely, that we don't have large trees and those type of things. They're not a security risk, and they're also not a risk from a vision standpoint looking across campus. The school buildings, the two pink bars are all the classrooms, and then you have the CTE functions on the top building, and in the tan gymnasium on the left, and then you can see the kind of wave component on the bottom. That's the visitation and the dining hall services as well. So let's go look at some of the photos. So these are the buildings. So these are secure buildings. So the perimeter of all these buildings for housing, they are secure. When you looked at the campus Kilpatrick, they were non-secure buildings, so they were free egress exit. So it was really a controlled access by the person running that unit, with those 12 kids that they were in charge of. With this, we do have the same thing, but they wanted this to function as both being able to operate it as detention or operate it as the campus, because it had to be used for both functions as we were doing the phasing. So the perimeters of the buildings are totally secure. We have security windows on the perimeter, but we did things with these to still make them look more residential in style buildings. Did buttons on the windows instead of bars, and different things to make the things that make it secure be more passive in nature than hardcore looking from a security standpoint. So the interior of the units, and again, there's a lot of things you can do with color and material and those type of things to still create a secure environment, right down to the furnishings. These are all durable furniture. These come out of lines of furniture that's used in the behavioral health world. So even though they look like they're really nice and you could go damage those furnishings, they're very durable. And if anybody that has kids, you know what kids can do to do to furnishings and those type of things. On the right is the sleeping rooms. So again, those are security doors on there, but they come with a faux wood finish to them. So they look more residential, more subdued than a hard and harsh security door. Inside the rooms, again, trying to get color but durability with the furnishings. On the left, you see that we put a chalk wall in each of the rooms. The chalk wall is a great way for the kids when they are in the room by themselves to be able to express themselves. And you were talking about some of the artwork that you've seen done in facilities, and even having the kids do it. Some of the artwork that we've seen on these chalk walls in the facilities that we've done, some of them are just beautiful artists, but some of them tell the story of their life too, and you can really get an understanding of the kid by what they draw on the wall. So those have been very successful ads for very minimal cost in facilities. Go ahead and go to the next, Marenko.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to point out that for so many years we had discussions about providing toilets inside or outside of the bedroom. So 90% of the times that I talk to kids, if they were for them, they would prefer to have that. So this is a time that some of the kids, their bodies are changing, and sometimes, they prefer to have their own space. And the thing is, like in the past, the problem was the way we were designing those toilets. We were designing toilets attached to the bed, and obviously you should not be peeing where you sleep. So what we have done now is to advance the layout of these bedrooms. As you can see, we put now a modesty panel that really separates the space where you sleep from like the space for taking care of your hygiene. So that has been also like an evolution and an
Yeah, that's
advancement in
so I'm
terms of
glad you brought that up, Mark, because there's another thing on this. The three doors that you see that are opaque, those are the three shower rooms with this unit. So instead of having an open shower area, we have an enclosed private shower area for each, but they're made when the light's on in that room and there's a person in there. You can still see a silhouette, so you know somebody's in there. You know, if more than one person's in there is probably the bigger thing you want. But you can also tell if anybody's having issues in the room. So that's another design feature that we've started to implement in the facilities as well, where they get the privacy, but you still have the safety that's needed. So another look at the outside of the unit, but the bigger thing here is on the inside. The picture on the right is it's a space inside the housing unit off of each day room that's really universal in nature. It can be used as a classroom. It can be used as there's a TV on the wall, and San Diego was going to use it as a kind of a benefits room, to where if a youth is doing good or that type of thing, they get an hour of Xbox or whatever. They get to go in this room by themselves and utilize it in that fashion. If there's anything that's happening in the unit, somebody's having a birthday party or something like that, there's a little kitchenette in here to serve as that. It's also set up to be a calming room. So if there's a youth that's having an issue and needs to be separated from the other kids, they can bring them into this room as well, and really set up to be a calming room. And you can tell from the attention that we put on the lighting in this, and the colored blocks that we put on the exterior wall, and the different finishes that we put in here. That was the whole intention around the finishes, was to create that space where it does have a calming effect for kids that might be having a little bit of a crisis at a certain point during the day.
I will say that I visited this facility like about 2 months ago, and if I had to pick a space that like I love in this facility, was this room, and because of those blocks. The effect of those glass blocks, it's amazing. For some reason, you enter to this room and there is a feel of calmness immediately. So I also want to point out that San Diego, this facility is the first facility in the United States that has been designed with all the literature that we know about trauma-informed care. So every detail of the facility, from the furnishings, the colors, the textures, the shapes, response of what we know about dealing with people with trauma.
Right.
And Marika, could I ask on that note, on the blocks,
The blocks.
were those the colors intentional, selected though for there too?
I don't know if maybe
the colors that were selected to be colors that would be a calming color type thing when you have the light shining through it. So yes, the colors that were picked for those were very intentional. And making them random was very intentional as well.
And this with the caveat that when you work with youth, the same when you work with adults, I guess in California is the same. We're very limited by the colors we can use, because there are colors that are associated with gangs that are out of the picture. So we have to be also mindful of that. But those colors, when the daylight hit this glass, it was amazing. It almost like a religious experience. I don't know. I simulates like like a
Yeah,
church.
you'll notice that a lot of colors in these facilities border on the kind of pastel colors, very
Mhm.
calming in nature. That's
Soothing,
the whole thing we needed with a color palette through these facilities. So again, this is an outdoor and indoor image of the dining area. On the left, you see that this is a dining hall that can be you can have two separate populations or two housing units dining on both sides at the same time. You can shut the space down. It can be a universal space. It's always meant to have whoever the staff person is that is working with the kids in whichever housing unit. That person moves with the kids all day long. So they're at class with them, they're meeting with them, or they're eating with them in this situation as well. So definitely a great concept on how to do these facilities. So
And
very
again, yeah, you see here the glass is like the evolution, like how we making those facilities so transparent, because in the past, I mean, it was like all brick walls, like it's like almost nobody needs to know what's happening inside. So by
right.
having all this amount of glass, whoever occupies the space, and especially the parents with incarcerated kids, to be able to see, like to have a view to where the kids live, where to go to school, it's just like it makes a difference from their, like it gives them like a peace of mind when they come to those facilities.
That's another good point, Marika, that the glazing in this facility, we had to fight for every piece of glazing that we had in here. We had numerous meetings with the Board of State Community Corrections. They borderline on making the youth detention facilities just detention facilities that very much favor what you would need for adults. But we also understand the safety concerns, which is mostly what they're about, but they're doing it with pushing security type products. So we actually had Mike Bush from the Board of State Community Corrections come to my office. We were remodeling the office at the time, but I had glazing samples shipped to me, 3 foot by 3 foot squares. And we showed him how you could use regular glass, not security glass, and it would be safe. And just by utilizing a tempered type glass that is a fourth of the cost of a security piece of glass, but you just thicken the tempering. So instead of a 1/4 inch temper like you normally get in a facility, you either increase it to 3/8 or a 1/2 inch thick to get the additional safety. And he was sitting in the office here beating on it with a hammer and couldn't even put a scratch in that glass. So that's the first facility type here that we've been allowed to stop utilizing security glass. So you'll see that with these window walls here, everything up to the halfway point is the thickened glass. Then when we get above that, we're back to normal 1/4 inch glass. So it's those type of things that need to be thought about, even with BSCC, as you go through these facilities to make sure that the best practices get incorporated into them.
Mm-hmm. And this does not show it in here, the exterior, but there is like a barbecue for staff and for residents. And then there is also like a barista car, which is a program of your facilities in California that I love.
Yep.
Yeah. And when I visited the facility, the person that was touring us was like telling us the story about those wards, and that the residents back when in this facility were part of the process to select some of the wards, and obviously the fun they had because the wards that the kids wanted in there. So those are aspirational wards that came from the residents when this facility was ready for like, the opening.
Yeah, the images on the screen here, this is the quad in the middle of the school buildings. So the image on the left is showing the opening where the outdoor stage is. And then on the opposite side of that, indoors, there's an indoor stage in the gymnasium portion of it as well. So it comes out here. So if it's a nice day out, which this is San Diego, so most days are nice there, they can do whatever functions they want typically in this outdoor atmosphere. Or they can come out here. We've incorporated benches, we've incorporated landscaping items so that if they want to bring the kids out of a classroom and teach a class outside on a certain day, they can do those type of functions as well. But then here, where this is the inside of the visitation, area. So again, nice open space. We have small spaces as well for 4 to 6 individuals around the perimeter. The image on the right shows the glass wall across the front to flood this thing with a lot of natural light. But you also see that there's 2 panes of glass on the right half of that. Normally you have a kids room where they basically it's a small office type space or something like that when somebody comes in with their kid, whether the child is a family member or even a son or daughter of the youth that's in the facility. Usually that space is just a small afterthought space over in a corner somewhere. For this, we really made it front and center, and we gave it quite a bit of space, and we made it really open. We want to make it a safe space so that we know what's going on with the kids and the family inside that room. But we also want to make it completely separate from the rest of the space, and really allow them to have a real nice space of their own as they utilize the visitation functions.
And again, a lot of glass so that the parents, the loved ones that are sitting there can see where the kids are living in the outside.
Right.
They come in when the door closes. I know we're running out of, like, how are we doing on time?
We have a half hour. We have a half hour left, so I think we're getting down to the last building
Oh,
here.
Okay,
So,
great. That way we all have time for questions.
yeah. We'll get through this one. It won't take long to go through this one. The next one. So this is we always have to remember the staff too. The staff are here longer than the youth a lot of times, so we got to make sure that we're designing for the staff. The space on the right is the dining area for staff. It also has an outdoor patio. It also has a link to the barista cart that Marika was talking about, and then the staff exercise areas as well. We had the value engineer out. There was a patio that was going to be added to this, with doors opening up onto the patio that could be opened up so they could be an indoor-outdoor space. But we had to value engineer that out. Unfortunately, it's one of the only things that we had to value engineer out. So anyway, let's go to the next. So here's a upper level look at the overall campus as well, so you can see some of the landscaping that's done in and around the facility. Okay, the way forward. So the next one we have just started. We're just finishing schematic design for Orange County on their new model for their youth. So kind of wanted to give you a taste of what's going on there. This is one that's on the boards, but again, very similar model, but it also has some very specific things that we haven't seen in a youth facility to date. So wanted to show you this one as well. The upper portion in yellow is the main portion of the campus that, again, just like San Diego, the long linear units, they look like they were designed and built by exactly the same person, almost, which they probably were, but definitely in the same style. That's not really conducive to youth. So we're demolishing everything in that yellow area on top, and we're basically going to make a camp for a portion of that, and then there's some long-term housing that is in the center little pocket there. One of the things that's really neat about this facility is the bottom right area. We're taking out a portion of that. It's going to be outside of security, and it's going to be a transitional housing. So kids that are coming out of the system, stepping down and coming out of the system, if they don't have a place to go in the community, don't have a family to go back to, those type of things, they'll be able to go into that style of housing and continue their programs as they continue to progress out of custody. But it's also set up for youth that are not in custody, but also don't have a place to live in the community, to be able to come to this facility, even without being incarcerated first, to get some of those programs and have a better living condition than what they have. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So I guess we should have done this. Shows you what we're actually putting here. So it's a 60-bed youth transition campus on the top. So the five housing buildings right there in the middle. And then along the top bar, on the top right, we have the school building administration in the middle, and then over to the left is we don't have another slide that points it, but to the left kind of quadrant of that classroom building is the dining hall. And then something unique to this facility is the transition housing unit. So there's an 8-bed community-based programming. So one of the first youth facilities I worked on was over in Riverside County, the Alan Croghan facility. We put one of these on there. This one happens to be an 8-bed unit where the kids during the day can leave and they can go to classes outside their normal classes, or if they have a job, if they're out of school, they can go to a job, but then they come back to this space, and then they can go back into the facility to utilize any classroom spaces that they need to. So a very universal space that can be used as well. And then we also have a new medical area on the bottom of that space as well. Below the red line, right in the middle, we have a long-term 48-bed secure housing unit that's more for long-term, and there is a separation between the camp above and those things, so there will be a physical separation between the two so they can operate independently of one another. And then we're also adding some education in classroom. And then again, the bottom right is where the sheltered independent living unit is going to be. We'll have 40 beds, and it's completely non-secure construction.
And that's one of the biggest changes from the past, and that's why we call it the way forward, where it's yet to come, yes. Because California, like other states, New York, raised the age, has pushed the age of the population. So now we have an influx of 17, 18s, but even learning from everything we know about the theories of brain development, we know now that the jurisdictions are considering having in these facilities youth up to the age of 25 years. Right. So that tremendously changes the dynamics of the facility, but also changes the type of services and needs that this population requires. So that's why more and more we are addressing the back end of the system, because I think now we are at a good point that we're doing great things with the kids while we have them, for the time we have them. The problem is the transition, like how to best prepare them to be on their own when we know we cannot return them to the same communities and households where that are the root of the cause. So that's why we are collocating in these facilities this type of services that did not exist in the past. And even so, when they say, well, everything should be community-based, when you start digging on what exists there, what will take this population, there are not a lot of shelter beds or this type of transitional housings in the community. So that's why we're bringing them and co-locating them with our secure facilities, but outside of the secure fence and sometimes under the jurisdiction of a different department, which helps you with the budget.
Right. And again, that sheltered housing unit, it's the first time that we've seen that done in the nation, new from scratch. We've seen some retrofit stuff where they've attempted to do parts of that, but and we have seen it done in a couple of adult institutions, but this is the first time we've seen it done in a youth institution. So very much the next thing to come. So here's a floor plan image of the overall that I talked about. So yeah, the upper right is the classroom. So you'll see very, very similar. This is a much more compressed site than the other couple of sites that we showed you. But we're still trying to do the same things. Kids still leave their housing units during the day, and they come back at night. So when they're gone, they're meandering through the sites. They're walking from place to place where they're supposed to be during the day, either in school. They walk over to dining. They walk over. The recreation is actually off to the right. You can't see it in this. It's part of the existing facility, so we're not really touching that portion. But yeah, it's really setting it up just like the other facilities to really normalize the way they do the way they go about their day. So again, this will be heavily landscaped. So that kind of shows what we're doing from a landscape standpoint. There's kind of an aerial image, and again, these are all on the boards. We've just finished the first phase of design. So it gives you kind of a sense of how compact this is, but we're putting all these things in between the buildings to make them meander through the site, but really have more of a normal experience as opposed to having an institutionalized experience. The circle that you see in the middle of this, it's both a gathering space, communal space, but this is also their horticulture program. So it's their horticulture garden in the middle of that circle. We've already talked about this housing. It's very similar to the others. Let's go to the next.
Just the looks.
There's the overall site.
Yes.
Looks
like apartments. Yeah.
I want to get to the other housing unit.
Yeah.
Here. So here's the interior look. Again, we're going after the same type of things with the other housing units that we're trying to do, introducing colors, woods, different furnishing types. Go ahead and go to the next.
Maybe
that one right there. Oh no, I wanted to show the long-term housing unit. One back.
One back.
Right there. So this is a long-term housing unit. So everything that we've showed you thus far is a single-story unit. And best practices, that's the way that you need to do youth facilities now. You don't want them to do the more detention tiered type look. In this instance, though, we do have to go 2 stories just because we're so limited on space in the facility. But we're implementing tactics so that this does not look like a normal detention facility. So you'll see that the stairs are one of the ways that we're doing that. We're tucking them back in the instead of making them come out into the day room, we're tucking them back so you don't see them from out in the day room. They're really minimalized. You'll see that from a room standpoint, we don't like to stack the rooms on top of one another. So you're seeing that we're utilizing mostly program spaces on the lower level, but just from a square footage standpoint, we still had to put 4 rooms on each side on the lower level. But when you get up to the upper level, it's all bedrooms, and the balcony that's up above, basically it's going to be a wood balcony with wood banister and those type of things to really normalize it, take all the steel out of it so that it doesn't look like a more detention type atmosphere. We're also having to do dining in here. So instead of doing dining in the day room, that would be normal of 80s type, 70s and 80s type construction. We're still putting a separated dining space so they can utilize it more normally like they would as if they were leaving the unit they're going to a separate space to do it. Okay, go ahead and let's go to the other. So this is the other specialty unit, so the sheltered unit that we were talking about. So again, the 3 bars on the top, those are the apartments, and they're 2-level apartments, so they do have a balcony across the front, but it's very much look and feel of apartment living. Each one of the apartments has 2 bedrooms in it and has its own kitchenette and bathroom in it. So you do have to share a room in here, but your nighttime, the bedrooms are cordoned off as well. And then everything in the dark blue is again, staff services. These are kids that are leaving the system in transition, or they're coming here to get additional services. So there's additional classrooms and those type of things, and staff spaces in the dark blue. And then there's some additional housing on the 2 bottom right and bottom left. You know, go ahead and go to the next one. This is the real nice image that you can really see what's going on here. That it's really set up as a small apartment community. So again, nothing like you've ever seen in a youth environment. So something that we're we're starting to get really proud of, and hoping this also becomes a new model for the extension of what started in Missouri and is now California has multiple new models that are extending what the Missouri model originally did. I think that's our last image, isn't it? All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Let's go ahead and open it up to if anybody has questions. I don't know. Can we open it up so people can ask their questions verbally or?
Yep. No,
Okay.
perfect. So thank you, Daryl and Marika. I appreciate your time, and we can open it up if anyone wants to drop a question in the chat, or certainly if you prefer, you can raise your hand and unmute, and you can ask your question directly. And one of the things I wanted to just say why folks maybe thinking of their questions or typing them in, I appreciated some of the earlier photos where you were showing what was in the District of Columbia on the East Coast side, just because obviously not every county has the space available or the capital to be able to build anything from scratch. And certainly with the changes that have happened in California with the passage of SB 823, California were needing to design units for longer term stays, which was not typical on the county side, typical on the state side. And so really looking at what can we do within our existing facilities to accommodate for having young people, both for longer periods of time, but as you mentioned, also all the way up to age 25 potentially in some instances. And so really trying to balance all of that. I think some of what you shared very early on, California has been a very youth focused on the probation side system and done a number of reforms over the last 2 decades plus to really make sure we're trauma informed and individualized and so forth. And so really the next piece, especially with this last reform, is really looking at physical space and what can we do. So appreciated having those images as well. And actually this question that just got posted is one that I kind of wrote down too. Someone is asking, for these changes, what type of time frame or approximation for designing and building? And if you could say for something new, and then also
Right. Yeah,
where you are redesigning an existing unit.
Yeah, I was gonna qualify that. It really depends. Depends on how much of the facility you're really gonna touch. So if you're looking at renovation, you can do phased renovation that goes fairly quickly. If you want to do upgrades to a housing unit at a time, you can probably be in and out of a housing unit in a month to a month and a half to do some of these upgrades. If you're going to change out furnishings in sleeping rooms, those type of things to more normal type furnishings, change out day room furnishings. If you're going to be redoing toilet rooms and those kind of things most people have stainless steel furnishings and those kind of things. There's more normative looking bathroom fixtures and those kind of things that we can use in these facilities now. So it really depends on what you're doing, but if you're retrofitting and you're doing it by phase, by housing unit, depends on how much space you can give at a time. If you can give a couple of housing units at a time versus one, you're cutting your time in half from a construction standpoint, because the contractor can get in there. If he's got 2 units, he can get in there in the same amount of time in those 2 units as he could in one for the most part. So you really need to phase it out and have somebody look at scheduling that. If you're doing new, again, it depends on the size of the building. But if you look at something like San Diego was about 8 months of design process, but we also it was a design build, so we had competition phase with that as well. So we had about 6 months of competition phase in front of that. So it all depends on kind of the delivery you do. And then first phase of that facility was about 1.5 years. And then there was 2 phases. So we've been in San Diego for about 4 years total right now to finish out both of their major phases. So it really it depends. If you're going to build just a new housing unit, size, you can usually do that in 3 to 4 months after it's designed. And you can probably get it designed in 3 to 4 months as well. I know the Oregon project that was shown, all it was primarily when we originally did that project was replacement of housing. So those housing units, each of them are very similar in nature. So the design work was done in about 4 to 6 months on those, and then the implementation of all the housing buildings was about a year long to get all of the housing buildings done, but they were moving kids into within about 6 months into the first housing units that were coming online. So
one of the things you also touched on, what Orange County is doing, and I think one of the other things California is looking at is under SB 823 is just the levels and the types of programming. And as youth are in now what we're developing or have developed and still in the process of developing a secure youth treatment facilities for young people who would have otherwise gone to the state facility. But as they progress through their treatment and their program plan, transitioning to less restrictive programs, and you touched on some of the going out into the community, coming back in. And so there's multiple, I think, design needs and program needs within facilities. And so just curious also, have you done any projects within just linear facilities? Because we have some counties where there is just one facility and it's maybe one unit or 2 units all in the same location. And so, and you mentioned this a little bit as far as if you can transition or you have one space closed off while you redesign a unit, are you able to do projects that are kind of like a living unit at a time?
yes, yeah, it all depends on what your needs are. So yeah, if you want to take a portion of your site and you've got an old classroom building or something like that, or you don't have classroom, but you have a rec area on site, you have a building that's going to come down later, we can build in an area of your site to build whatever function it is, whether it's a new housing unit or a new programs building or whatever it is, we can build in that area. And then after that's opened and you move into that, then we phase it so that the other piece comes down that you're vacating. So yeah, there's definitely I think you saw with each one of these, Orange County, McLaren, the San Diego, all of those were phased projects. So we had to take a look at the existing facilities and what can we take down to gain as much site area as we can so we can build as much as possible at a time while we do it. But we also have to maintain security of the operating facility as well. So we have to put security measures in place to separate the youth from any construction areas as well. So.
And we do have a few minutes left. So if there were any other questions that anyone wanted to ask, please do feel free to put those in the chat, or you can raise your hand function if you would like to ask your question yourself. I did appreciate the example and the engagement that you mentioned having with the BSCC and the work that was done there and understanding sort of that engagement, because certainly in California, we're obviously bound to Title 24 for what we're able to do. And so, but as we look to adjust, our physical spaces to the types of programming and the youth that we serve, kind of looking at how do we do so within the regulations.
They're still very much set into what was done in the 80s and 90s. And again, a lot of it comes out of the adult detention facilities as well, that they're taking that and they're implementing it in the youth facilities as well. So every little bit we can do to try to push them to normalize these facilities is a great thing.
Other questions or comments? And again, we will be sending out the PowerPoint in the near future. So I know that that's something that folks are always desiring, especially if anyone's looking to get ideas.
Yeah,
The
'cause
work,
they're-
certainly in the realignment that happened, there wasn't really there
Yeah,
was not any funding for new facilities, so.
Rosie, just point out when we send it, the part with the Orange County, if I have to guess, we're probably not going to get permission to put that in here, just
Oh.
because it's still in the middle of design. So I'm not sure that they're going to want that out for people to have.
Yes.
But everything else is in there that we can share with everybody. But we're still going to ask permission of Orange County if they're okay with us sharing it.
Yeah,
with this
no
group.
problem.
Knowing who this group is, and it's all their pairs. So
Yes, but certainly we will wait. And whichever version we get, I know folks will be happy to receive the information. So, well, I don't see any additional questions. So I really do want to thank you both for being with us this afternoon, and for the great information, and I look forward to speaking with you in the near future.
all right, thank you very much.
Thank
All right,
you.
thank you, everyone.
All right.